I have no problem with them having the views that they have, but when it's, I do think it's a little bit too extreme and hateful.
What you're doing is a sin, so instead of living in an immoral life, we'll just make a law, so it's legal.
Once again, all eyes on the U.S. Supreme Court as lawyers today made their cases, and so did protesters, and the justices prepared to wrestle with the issue of same-sex marriage and California's proposition, which banned the practice. Well, today, the justices were asking both sides some pretty sharp questions. And as our Bruce Johnson reports, they wondered aloud if now is really the time for such a big decision, which would change the traditional institution of marriage forever.
Good to see y'all. All eyes in the courtroom were on Justice Anthony Kennedy today. He's off in the critical vote on divisive issues. He openly questioned whether the Supreme Court should even have accepted the case of deciding if California's Proposition 8 banning same-sex marriage is constitutional.
You're really asking, particularly because of the sociological evidence you cite, for us to go into uncharted waters.
The bench seemed divided, with liberals sharply questioning the D.C. attorney representing supporters of the ban.
And the state's principal interest in marriage is in regulating procreation. Is that basically correct?
Your Honor, that's the essential thrust of our position, yes.
We believe that Proposition 8 is constitutional, and the place for the decision to be made regarding redefining marriage is with the people.
The respected Supreme Court blog had 4 justices friendly to same-sex marriage as a constitutional matter, 3 clearly opposed and likely to attract 1 more vote.
You think the justices are under some kind of pressure? Consider this. At one point, Justice Alito says, you want us to step in and render a verdict. This is also new, newer than the cell phone. Why don't we leave it up to the people? With all your experience, just a quick question. With all your experience, you're not able to read the justices? You didn't pick up
never do that. I never do that. They'll tell us
David,
when they're
you didn't
ready.
pick up anything in there?
Lawyers for California residents seeking to overturn Proposition 8 were cautious following today's session. They appeared with some of the couples who are fighting the ban on gay and lesbian marriages in the state.
Proposition 8 is a discriminatory law that hurts people. It hurts gays and lesbians, and it hurts the children we're raising, and it does so for no good reason.
Word is the justices could vote in private on California's Proposition 8 as early as tomorrow. A decision wouldn't be made public until June. Bruce Johnson, WUSA 9.
Now, let us talk about the Defense of Marriage Act, better known as DOMA. Bill Clinton signed that law years ago. The measure defines marriages as between a man and a woman, and that's the one that will be at the center of the arguments before the High Court tomorrow, when the justices tackle a second same-sex marriage case. President Clinton has since shifted his position and has spoken out in favor of gay marriage. All right, so one of the biggest arguments here, when it comes to same-sex marriage, is it constitutional for the government to say you can't do it? Can the government legally refuse to recognize a marriage based on a couple's sexual orientation and gender? Here with me to try to clear that up, Professor Paul Rothstein from Georgetown University, who specializes in constitutional law. Professor, welcome.
Thank you, Derek.
Glad to have you here. Let's look at the 14th Amendment. I'm going to quote it for just a second. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens, and nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. That seems pretty straightforward to me. If you can marry who you want, I can marry who I want under the law, right? What's wrong with that picture?
Well, I agree with that, but the argument on the other side is that it's not unequal protection if there's a reason to treat the 2 different situations differently, the gay differently from the straight, and therefore they're not really the same case. So what they're trying to do is to see if there's reasons and differences between the 2 situations, the gay and the straight, to make a difference.
In other words, if the court has a big enough reason, then there is a possibility of some discrimination between the 2 kinds of marriage.
That's correct.
All right, is it fair to say there are actually 2 issues at work here? That is the legal questions, which we're talking about now, and the legacy of the court questions. Nobody wants to end up as part of Plessy versus Ferguson court that, votes for separate but equal.
That's right. They don't want to be on the wrong side of history and look like the world's stupidest court. And I think that will influence the justices. They won't admit it, but I think that it will. And personally, it does look to me like the drift of the country is toward allowing gay marriage. Now, there is a kind of way out for the court to just step back and say, we're not going to decide this, as a couple of the justices indicated in the argument, and just let the states vote one by one individually, and eventually perhaps there will be a consensus that gay marriage is fine.
Yeah, that is the middle ground, right? The court could in essence punt on this case, but if they were going to do that, why take these cases in the first place?
Well, there are situations where they admit they've made a mistake, and that's sort of what Justice Kennedy was saying today. We should admit that we made a mistake in taking this case.
Yeah, do you think the justices run the risk, if they were to go all the way and say the 14th Amendment means that you really can't ban gay marriage, that there could be a backlash against the court, that could actually hurt the cause of gay marriage?
Well, it could be. Yes, one of the arguments about what they did in abortion was that they shouldn't have commanded that abortion is illegal throughout the whole country. They should have let the country come to that conclusion state by state. It eventually would have happened, maybe not as quickly, but then it would have had more basic acceptance by the people. So that's one of the arguments that is made, non-legal argument.
Now, there is the issue of Justice Roberts, the Chief Justice, who obviously has a lot of sense of where he is and how important his legacy is, and was the deciding vote in favor of Obamacare, which surprised a lot of conservatives. Could we see something similar this time around?
Well, we could. I always thought from day one, after listening to the hearings on Justice Roberts, that he was too smart to be doctrinaire one side or another, too smart to be straight down conservative all the time on every issue, knee-jerk. And for a long time he did seem to be knee-jerk conservative, but he turned around on Obamacare, and there's a decision where he turned around, and he had his gay cousin in the audience today. And so there may be, we haven't seen all there is to see about Justice Roberts, and he even indicated in the oral argument he might feel that this case should not be taken, and they should go back on having taken it, or at least that the people who brought it didn't have standing to do it.
So in other words, kick the can down the road just a bit.
Yeah, but if they do that, what will happen is that the lower court decision will stand, and that means gay marriage is reinstituted, is still the law in California. Will become the law, because the thing repealing gay marriage, the lower court said that was
and it'll still stand, of course, in the other states that are legalized.
It will only affect California.
All right. Thank you, Paul Rothstein. Fascinating. Paul Rothstein, I should say. Thank you so much. Great conversation.
Like Frankenstein.